left, 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 right, left, 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 right, left, left, left. Squad up. It don't matter where you been.
It don't matter where you been.
Modern warfare is back again.
Modern warfare is back again.
Drop on in, no time to waste.
Drop on in, no time to waste.
Pull up with the bob, superheroes, no capes.
Pull up with the bar, superheroes, no capes.
Squad up, run it back.
Squad up, run it back.
Got nothing to do, and that's a fact.
Got nothing to do, and that's a fact.
Avec l'équipe, on va débarquer.
Avec l'équipe, on va débarquer.
Call it second play all day.
Call it second play all day.
These badass honeys gonna bust your face.
These badass honeys gonna bust your face.
I swear this ain't my mommy's place.
He swears this ain't his mommy's place.
Ranking up all day and night.
Ranking up all day and night. It's not a game, it's a way of life. It's not a game, it's a way of life.
Squad up,
Squad up, back for more, back for more.
squad up.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Call of Ass Modern Shit 2 is a perfect example on what not to spend your hard-earned money on. A piece of shit that took over 3 years to make, backed by the US military and taxpayers with a $300 million budget. This is the rant of Call of Ass Modern Shit 2, one of the worst Call of Duty releases to have ever come out since Vanguard. You could just tell by the intro video that I put in here, one of the commercials that released with a bunch of streamers, rappers, and other retards you could think about, including Skeet Davidson. You could tell that this game was overhyped from the beginning only because it was just a reboot of the original Modern Warfare 2. And because of the success of the now rebooted Modern Warfare from 2019, you would expect the team to actually make a good game like they did back then. But surprisingly, they somehow didn't, and I don't know how that's possible, especially when you have the budget of the US military backing you to help with their propaganda against Muslims. And I don't think I've played a bigger piece of shit in my life other than Call of Duty Modern Shit 2.
Oh my god! Oh! Oh my fucking god!
Now, let's start from the beginning, where you were actually able to play the game, as in the beta. During the summer, Activision and Infinity Ward released the beta for Modern Warfare 2's multiplayer, and it was actually quite good. You had one of the shittiest maps, which was the museum map that was based off of a actual museum in LA. So believe it or not, the beta for the game was actually really good.
Shoot a gun, dog. Learn how to fucking shoot a gun, you
fucking riot shield. What else am I gonna
Oh, riot shield! I'm a pussy that use riot shield!
Oh, now I'm a... What do you want me to use?
And then now, this is the point where we move on to week 0 of the launch, which allowed you to play the campaign 1 week early before the entire release of the game, where you would have Spec Ops and multiplayer, the main attraction of the game. Now, I played as soon as it came out, week 0, day 1, whatever the fuck you want to call it. I played the campaign, and the campaign was good. I didn't see any problems with the campaign. I thought it was a wonderful campaign, and it actually gave people a little bit more hype that the multiplayer was going to be good. Now, when I played the campaign, there were very few bugs. Nothing that couldn't be fixed either later on, or nothing that was so gameplay changing that it really mattered. And I enjoyed it. Except, this is where the US military comes in. You see, when you have the military backing your stuff, they're going to want you to make a lot of changes for their propaganda. So what do you think they did? Not only did they alter the story, but they also made it worse at the same time by not only including missiles, once again, which is a very boring plot, but also having to, make Iraq another main point in the game, even though it's entirely pointed towards the Mexican cartel. Other than that bullshit, the campaign was actually pretty good. So we have not only the beta, but the campaign being good as well. So you would think when the day of multiplayer comes out, October 28th, you think the game would be perfect. But it looks like things took a wrong turn. So let's start at the beginning. Call of Duty 2019, one of the greatest Call of Duties to have come out in recent years after an entire row of dog shit games. And then, next year, by Treyarch, we have the wonderfully crafted Cold War. So, you'd think that Infinity Ward and Treyarch have gotten their shit together, crafting two of the greatest Call of Duty games once again to come out in recent years. So you'd think that Infinity Ward would have gotten it again for their sequel. But oh boy, did they just not do that. Launch day, October 28th, 2022. The game came out, and everybody was excited, jerking off, ready to spend all of their money on the shittiest microtransactions anybody has ever seen since Goat Simulator DLC. So now, you would think that the game would run good, and for a week, about a week actually, yes, a week, the game ran quite smooth. Then, the problems started to arise. The cheaters, because the anti-cheat, we all know, does absolutely nothing. The glitches, the endless glitches, the crashes, and the awful frame rate, maps, and so other things that shipped with multiplayer day one. So you'd think, during the beta, the team would have time to better optimize their game, but they somehow managed to fuck it up even more. Let me give you a good example. Trying to load into Call of Duty when a new update arises, which of course are just really shitty skins, the game loves to crash. Doesn't even let you update it. It actually crashes. And not only do you need to enter the game in order to update it, only for it to crash, and re-enter it just to now update it, only for it to crash again, you can't update it through the Steam launcher, where the majority of the Call of Duty player base has bought it because nobody wants to go to a shitty third-party app to buy their games. In all my years of living, I don't think I've seen a game crash so many fucking times unreasonably other than Modern Warfare 2022. It has no reason to crash, but for some reason, it just manages to crash. I don't know how it does it, but it finds a way. This then leads into the discussion of the optimization for this game. I have never seen ever optimization this bad. The game manages to run from 150, sometimes 150, at the maximum, to 80 to 40 FPS on PC. And by the way, I'm running this on a 3080 Ultimate. A 3080 Ultimate on an SSD and hard drive with a fucking Intel i7 9th gen. You'd think for those two parts alone, they're $1,400. Actually, $1,600 if you put the SSD on top of that. It may run smooth like its predecessors, but somehow it doesn't. For context, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019 and Call of Duty Cold War at 2K high settings runs at a measly 250 plus FPS on my system. So how the fuck you manage to get the game so poorly optimized, it manages to crash every other time. You have the US military backing you, and you can't even optimize your game with their infinite budget that they take from taxpayers? It has been 4 months that they could have fixed any of these issues, but they didn't. They just added more skins. Well, they couldn't even fix the most basic issue. How? Season 2 is almost here, and you're telling me we went through launch date, week 0, in Season 1, and you somehow couldn't fix the most critical things that I paid $100 for? How is this allowed? They shouldn't be allowed! Where's the FCC when you need them? There's no way you're charging $70 to $100 for a next generation game that you've been working on for 3 years just to not give us the tiniest amount of content, but also the worst bugs to have ever occurred in a Call of Duty game ever!
I tried to sneak through the door, man. Can't make it. The shit's stuck. Out of my way, son! Door's stuck! Door's stuck! Please!
Alright, let's move on to maps. The maps in this game are oh my god! What were they thinking? What were they thinking? These are the worst maps I have ever seen in my entire life. There is no possible way Infinity Ward had made any of those maps other than shipment. It has to be the work of the neo-Nazis that work at Sledgehammer Games, because it's just not possible. Not only did they show off classic maps that were supposed to be remastered for this game, even before the game launched, not a single one shipped. Not even shipment shipped with Season 1. It's shipment! It's a fucking Minecraft 16x16 cube! How do you not even shipment with a Call of Duty game, even after one of the major updates? Like, that doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. Speaking of shipment, I've had enough of that piece of shit map. It doesn't need to be in every Call of Duty game ever. It's like the epitome of Dusk 2 of CSGO. I can't do this shit anymore. The map is awful. Not even shipment, a cube, is optimized. I'd rather play on the rubbles of 9/11 than play on shipment again. That would be a more creative map than this piece of shit being remastered over and over again. Even before the game launch, they teased that some of the original maps, the most critically acclaimed maps from the original Modern Warfare 2 multiplayer, would be coming back. This includes Shipment, Dome, High Rise, and Terminal. And none of those maps, other than Shipment, have actually came back into the game, other than Al-Mazrah and Warzone 2, which are two of the shittiest modes to have ever come to the Call of Duty game. This then leads into two other major points that ruined this game for a lot of people, including me. The launch of Warzone 2 and DMZ and the entirety of Al-Mazrah. Once again, US government propaganda. Because of course, it has to take place in the Middle East and be a really shitty map. I can't do this shit anymore. I genuinely cannot do this shit anymore. DMZ and Warzone 2 are two of the shittiest crossover modes to have ever come to a Call of Duty game, ever. And I just don't know, like, what positives there are to it. The only thing, like, DMZ came out less than a month when Modern Warfare 2 launched. And I've been grinding on that shit for way too long. And it's not even that fun. The bots have aimbot, the challengers are stupid as fuck, And it is extremely easy for people to camp the chemist, which is one of the bosses in the game, and just kill you when you're trying to go kill him. It's absolutely mind-boggling and bullshit that people genuinely do not have the IQ to play the game properly. Sitting in the fucking corner and waiting for people at any random chance to come get the chemist for an actual rewarded challenge is like the easiest shit for them, because it's just them camping and they get you every single time. I don't think there's ever a time where I've killed the people who are camping, because they're just impossible to find in that fucking zone. Speaking of the chemist, the only other boss in the game is the Juggernaut, which is not really the most impossible boss to kill, until they decided to nerf the fact that you could run him over with a car by every EMP device you have getting disabled by him within a certain radius. Him and the chemist are the only reason that you would want to play DMZ other than leveling up your guns. There is no other reason to play DMZ other than killing those two bosses just to get, like, some new weapons, which you have to play DMZ in order to get. And plus, you can't even get the chemist variant of the skin after you kill him. You just unlock the weapon, the B13? That's the only weapon that you could actually get from it. You don't even get a special variant for killing him, even though he has one with a unique skin that you can't get anywhere in-game. And if you thought the map was bad enough, think about it being ported to Warzone 2. How do you think that went for them? Oh, it did not go so well, because they managed to lose 70%. 70 or more % of the player base on Warzone 2. They haven't done anything to improve Warzone 2, still has even worse issues than multiplayer with its optimization. It actually gets impossible to play sometimes, even for console owners, by the way, because the frame rate somehow dips below 30 FPS. And you need frames in a game like that. Oh, by the way, everyone's playing the game on low settings. 30 FPS on low settings? How? How is it that Modern Warfare 2, the original Warzone, and Cold War, I was able to play the game on fucking ultra settings, and I was able to get fucking a 300 FPS, but somehow in Warzone 2, at 720p, at the lowest settings, the game can't even run over 100 FPS in most areas. This then brings up the topic again of optimization issues. I did forget to mention before, but I'm going to mention it now. I've been playing this game at low settings, and I still get the worst frame rate ever. Again, $3,000 plus PC and still can't play this game properly. And it isn't just me, it's several other people, including console players. Two of my friends own the Xbox Series S and X. The game runs like shit for them. My other friend, he has it on the PS4, crashes all the time, including in private lobbies. Why and how is that possible? It's on a console, and it's crashing more than my system when it's supposed to be more optimized for them than us PC players. Chapter 6 is where we get into minor changes that should have not been made in this game that kind of affected overall in a certain way. Let's start with the weapon names. They unreasonably went into a random word generator and started generating a bunch of shit because they were way too lazy to give the guns the actual names that they have in real life compared to what they did in past Call of Duty games. There was absolutely no reason for them to do this, but for some reason they decided, yep, we're still going to do this. And what the fuck are these team names? What is this shit? Where are the factions? Where are the original factions? This also correlates to them deciding, instead of having factions and normal player models, to have operators in the game. And operators just fucking suck in general. Sure, they could be cool from time to time, but it's just a marketing tactic for you to buy more skins for that particular character. Oh, here's another one. Why is gun game in random game modes that are supposedly supposed to come out in the future locked behind the private games? What is the purpose of that? Why not just release it if it's available there in the private game mode section? It doesn't make sense. And it gets even stupider, because in order to activate gun game, it's not even on the list, by the way, of games. You have to go into free-for-all, go into the settings, and enable gun game, instead of it being its own mode. After the entire backlash of the awful UI that the game has, they announced that during Season 1 and during mid-Season 1, they would actually be changing the UI to something better, and guess what? They didn't. The UI is still a piece of shit as it was when the game launched. Another thing that I think is quite important is the game's voice announcer, and just the voice acting in general. Now, for the characters, the voice acting isn't actually that bad. I feel like for a lot of characters, the voice acting is pretty good, and can sometimes fit the character depending on who we're talking about. And also, the voice acting in general for the voice announcer, the guy who is overhead saying UAV, he fucking sucks. There is like, when you compare it to the original Modern Warfare 2, you'd think that this reboot would have a lot more improvements, or some of the funny original things that the original had, but it doesn't. It's really just a boring old voice announcer that really doesn't put too much emotion into his speaking. In fact, it really feels, I think it's the same guy that did it for Warzone 1, and it kind of makes sense for Warzone 1, but for something that is as chaotic as multiplayer, the original voices were definitely a lot better. And this also then comes in with the whole thing with factions, because you would have a different voice announcer for each faction depending on what side you're on and which factions you are playing as during the game. They put a lot of emotion and whatever they needed to into it compared to what this guy does. I'm not saying that he's bad at what he's doing, it's just that he should probably just stick to Warzone or DMZ, where, I don't know, it feels a little bit more tactical for him to be in there compared to multiplayer. Oh, here's another one. How about on the Steam version of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, for some reason, whenever Steam gets disconnected, especially on Tuesdays for a split second, the game feels like it needs to entirely close itself because you were disconnected from Steam for a quick moment. Why the absolute fuck is that a thing? Why should I be disconnected because Steam went offline for a quick second? In the past 3 Call of Duty games, for their shitty launcher, when Blizz Network went offline, did they fucking make you exit the game? No! No, they never did that. They just said, hey, you're lagging here. We're gonna freeze you. You're gonna freeze really quick because you're not connected. But that's okay, because we're not going to kick you out. We're going to wait for you to get back online. And that's what it always did. So why is this version of the game so dependent on being attached to Steam? It's fucking stupid. I'm gonna hit you with the fucking Persona 5 one more, because there are still some more things to complain about. Why is it when on PC you connect a controller, you specifically have to go into the controller settings and enable the joystick? You can't move unless you enable the joystick. And this is set by default, by the way. For some reason, the game thinks it's fucking hilarious to make you use a controller and a mouse at the same time. And for some reason, I don't know why, that setting is enabled when it shouldn't be. So now you have to go all the way into your settings just to find the fucking joystick option for your controller and use it. You know, you have to enable your joystick controller, which doesn't make sense at all. And now, here's another one. Why in God's name, I need this to be explained to me, when you have certain programs that don't interfere with the game at all, why does the game refuse to open? I have my Mac address changer open, and Call of Duty refuses to open. I have Hit Film open, which is a editing software I'm using right now to record and make this video. Why does it still refuse to open on something like this? It doesn't make any sense. I'm actually going to speed this one up now. Let's see. The problem with camping and the problem with spawn points. The game is fucking riddled with campers and doesn't seem to punish them at all. Shotguns barely do any damage even when maximized out with the strongest fucking bullets and longest barrels possible. The perk system should have never been changed, so where now you are only allowed to pick 3 perks and an ultimate perk, and they unlock throughout the match. Although the advertising for the game was quite well done, it's also extremely expensive, especially when you have the audacity to put a 3D billboard in the middle of New York, when a lot of that budget could have gone towards hiring more developers to actually finish the game on time. Speaking of finishing things on time, there was completely no purpose of them to make an entire new engine just for this game, only to make the game worse. Not only do the graphics look like ass, but the only thing the engine really does is change the water physics, as it only affects one level in the story mode and was completely useless when a lot more of that time could have been handled with multiplayer. Not only does the game look somehow worse than Modern Warfare 2019, there was completely no point to changing the engine, especially when they worked from the past 3 years, from 2016, to build an entirely new engine for the Call of Duty franchise. Speaking of which, that is their first new engine that they've made since the one back all the way in 2003. Speaking on saving time to get things done, what was the actual point of remastering some of these maps, or should I say reskinning some of these maps like Shoot House and Shipment, when they could have been easily ported over to save time and also add a bunch of extra content into the game, so where more people would stay instead of having to wait till, I don't know, a new season just to get a map that they want. Another big complaint are the stims in this game. They practically made the stims completely useless, as now they completely remove the speed buff that you get with it, but it also makes it so where if you get hit by an enemy while you're still healing, it completely cancels the heal for a certain amount of time, practically making it useless for you to get away from enemies. It used to be meta in the old Call of Duties, like Modern Warfare 2019 and Cold War, so why nerf it this bad in this game to the point where nobody uses it? Another complaint is when Warzone launched, they had 3v3 unhinged, which was the only way you were actually able to play with 3 people at the time, and it was actually impossible to get into the lobbies because you would need to have 150 people in the game. And because the game prevented 150 people from joining even when people left, it wouldn't populate the lobbies, it was actually impossible for you to get into a game in unhinged. And why would they have unhinged on instead of an alternative 3v3 mode? This way you don't have to recruit other people or deal with teams of 6. And one of the biggest complaints about Call of Duty's online multiplayer is the fact that they give fake artificial ping and lower the damage of your weapons, specifically to the player, depending on how many games you have won and how well your KD is, which is complete bullshit, because no other game does that, and it happens pretty much every other match, and it makes the game unfun, because I don't want to start artificially lagging out of nowhere because it wants to balance out the game. Why do that instead of having actual skill-based matchmaking where it depends on what level you are? They got so lazy when it came to creating the new grind system to the fact that you have to use multiple guns in order to unlock attachments for other guns, and then other guns lead to different variation of that gun, which aren't good. If I could tell you the amount of AKs they have, I would have been like a billionaire by now. And for my final minor complaint, the music really sucks. When you compare it to the original Modern Warfare 2 music, where you hear that hit like rock music and you're like getting all ready, pumped up, badass, ready to go on in there and kill your enemies, you don't have that in this one. This one's just really boring fucking desert ass type beat music, and it really doesn't make you pumped up for anything. It just sucks. Also, Spec Ops, it isn't Spec Ops. It's just really bad, like, tower defense fucking monkey game mode, bro.
Oh my fucking god! Dude, why is it that when I flash somebody, it's like I just slapped them in the face with a fucking napkin from a little kid's birthday?
In conclusion, you should definitely not spend any money on this game whatsoever, and it is most certainly not playing Warzone 2, even though it is free. The game is terribly optimized, still doesn't have a lot of content to get players interested, and really just sucks in general. The only reason why you'd want to play it is just for the normal campaign, or one of the random game modes that they added during Season 1, which is an expansion of the story, Raid. So in that case, I'm getting the fuck out of here. I'll see y'all in the next video.